As mentioned in the research project overview, in Milestone 1, you're going to go through and investigate the given research question. Are all spiral galaxies blue and all elliptical galaxies red? So while you're going through and doing this, you're going to work yourself through the various steps in the Milestone 1 activity as listed in the research project student instructions, while at the same time answering the questions in the Milestone 1 submission activity. So when you get started, you want to go through, have both tabs open, similar to what I'm showing here, so that you can see them, maybe not at the exact same time, but you're going to be going back and forth between them. One of the first things you're going to do is access the Galaxy Zoo datasheet, make your own copy, and again, go ahead and share that link, paste that. That's the answer to item number 1, is to share your link so that I'll be able to go through and see whatever spreadsheets of things that you make. And you can do this at the beginning because anything that you go through and add to it as you work yourself through the activity will all be saved, and so therefore even if you share the link at the beginning and put it in your activity, everything will be included. So for step 1, you'll want to start to think about what you know about the color of galaxies and what other sort of things you have learned about galaxies that might be able to give you a hypothesis to answer the research question to begin with. So do you have an answer, a guess, an educated guess based on what you know and what you've learned to answer the research question? Are all spiral galaxies red? Are all spiral galaxies blue and all elliptical galaxies red? So that's what you want to go through and do for number 2 in your submission activity. And then you're going to start to go through, in order to start answering 3, start to visualize the data. So now we need to go through over to step number 2. Step number 2 will talk to you about what the various pieces of the datasheet are telling you, in particular the ones that you're going to utilize. So you're going to be creating a color index, similar to what we did back in the HR diagram activity. Instead of B minus V, which is what we used in the HR diagram activity, we're going to use G minus R, and the specific labels in your datasheet are G mag for G magnitude and R mag. So you're going to go through and add a new column, calculate the G minus R color index from the data itself. There are some notes here on how to go through and do this. So you'll need to go through and do this as a formula. So that means hitting equals. Remember, similar to what we went through and did in one of our earlier activities, to go through and create formulas. Specifically in the Zoo Tools activity, we went through and calculated distance and some other things there. So in your analysis, you want to keep these specific color indicators in mind. So there's essentially a dividing line, and anything, a color index above that will be considered one color, and a color index below that will be considered a different color. And they even give you a little key for how to do a shortcut. Once you have the formula written for one of your columns, there's a little shortcut there for how to go through and paste that information into all of the rows in that particular column. So once you've gone through and created that color index column in your activity, you'll be ready to move on to step 3. We're still not ready to answer question 3 though. So in step 3, you're going to go through and use the filtering tool in our Zoo Tool for Sheets add-ons. So again, the instructions talk you through how to go through and utilize this filtering tool. The main points that you want to keep in mind are, 1, you're going to be filtering out for the different types of galaxies, spirals versus ellipticals. And each time you do this, you want to make sure that you create a new tab to utilize it, so that every time you filter, you're not filtering from your main data set and therefore losing information. You're copying over to a new tab which will save that filtered information. So that way you can always go back to the beginning if you need to. If something goes wrong, you can always go back to the link in Canvas to the main data sheet and create a new copy and start from scratch again. Just make sure to share the one that includes your final answers and visualizations in the submission activity. So that's the one that I go through and look at. This data set is very large, so you'll need to be patient when going through some of these steps. It can take up to a minute, maybe two, depending on, number one, your internet and just the size of the data set for the processes to complete. So be patient. And if you have any questions along the way, reach out to me on Slack or Canvas messages, and we can jump into a quick Zoom session, share screens, and try and figure out what's going on. So you're going to use this filter tool a couple of times to create both a spirals tab and an elliptical tab. Then you're going to go through and start to look at the statistics of the information that you have for both your spirals and your ellipticals to go through and investigate the color index for all three of the tabs you have right now: all galaxies, spirals, and ellipticals. From there, you're going to go through and plot some histograms for that color. Remember, histogram is not an add-on for ZooTools. That's something that you're going to need to use in chart. When you first make a chart, it's not going to give you a histogram. So you're going to need to select the chart type and scroll all the way down to histogram, just like you were shown in the ZooTools activity. So please refer back to that video if you need a little bit of extra help remembering how to go through and do that procedure. For the last part of step 3, you're going to go through and use the filter tool again. On the spiral galaxy tab, you'll go through and filter it to pull out only those spirals that also have the red color. And on the elliptical galaxy tab, you'll go through and do the same thing to pull out the ellipticals that only have the blue color. Again, this relates directly to our research question. Once you have all of those histograms created, you've gone through and looked at the statistics, you have each of your tabs for all galaxies, spiral galaxies, elliptical galaxies, blue elliptical galaxies, and red spirals, then you'll be ready to go through and answer the rest of the questions in your submission activity. So number 3 is going to ask you, what is the data telling you? And 4, how do you interpret this data? So what are some physical reasons why you're getting the results that you're getting? 5 and 6 are essentially you answering your research question just in 2 parts. One of them is relating to ellipticals, the other one is relating directly to spirals. And then the last few questions in your submission activity, number 7 is, can you think of any additional plots or statistics you might have been able to create or analyze to help answer these questions? And so this is to give you an idea of what are some of the other ways that you could try and visualize this data to try and understand it. When you go through and are working on your own research question, you're going to need to create multiple visualizations. So thinking about some of the different ways to represent data and to see data is very important. So that's something you'll want to consider here for this research question, so you can get some feedback to make sure you're on the right track for when you do this for your own research question. Number 8 is going to be, how does your original hypothesis compare to the results that you got as going through this guided inquiry activity? And also, what did you learn by going through this process? Number 9 is sort of a question to have you start thinking about, well, what else do I want to know? And this is usually how people come up with research questions. They don't come up with them out of the blue. They go through and investigate something, and more often than not, you're left with more questions than you are with answers. So what are some other questions that you still have lingering in that brain of yours that relate to either the specific research question, the data set itself, the analysis that you did, or anything else related to this project? So this will be a good place for, once you submit this activity and you start talking to some of your classmates, to try and see if you have some commonalities on a research question that you might all agree upon. So once you've gone through and completed all 9 of those questions, you've gone through all 4 of the steps in order to help complete the 9 questions for Milestone 1, then you're ready to submit and move on to the next activity.